As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Nikki Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into the lives of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes and what happens when the Great Depression hits, as well as the lingering connections into the modern day. Each episode is comprised into 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story told with some creative license to enhance the emotional and psychological situations. Section 2 goes into the historical facts behind the scenario with occasional historiography to analyze sources and any biasness. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections that help make the story relevant to the current day. Now back to As the Money Burns. The Sport of Kings. It's Polo Week in Newport, thus games of loves and fortunes are all in play. Polo might be the sport of kings, but for our young heiresses, the prize seems to be their hearts. Section 1. Story. Today on the massive lush green lawn overlooking the cliffside, both young and old elites gather for another day of play. A Newport summer is a very demanding schedule. Almost every week has a designated activity, and one of the first being polo. The very well-dressed crowd in their semi-casual attire could be its own fashion show, a colorful array of tea-linked dresses paired with fashionable hats, gloves, pocketbooks, and some even a parasol. The men wear summer suits, the players strut about in their jerseys and jodhpurs, flirting with the ladies. In this hotbed of young heiresses, the right playboy could have his pick of beauties. It is the perfect place for someone like visiting Royal Prince Alexis Mdivani to parade his skills both on the field and off. He maneuvers about with the reigning it girl Louise Van Alen by his side. The family friends make a striking pair in this rarefied world, though they are not an actual couple. As the first game plays, the super rich casually sit picnic style on the grass. To Louise and her brothers, the prince provides commentary on different infractions. Hovering within earshot, the budding teen fashionista, Barbara Hutton, jealously studies the prince and Louise's interactions, while her awkward and fellow teen, Doris Duke, focuses on the actual game. After the match, Prince Alexis politely excuses himself from the Van Alen clan and goes over to Barbara, who nearly faints when he inquires about her ever-present poetry book. He flips casually, reading from a dog-eared page or two. Now it is Louise who waits jealously and signals for him to return. The prince waves back, then absent-mindedly tucks the book under his arm and walks off in another direction towards the horses, thus leaving both adoring females confused. Lunch is served. Everyone meanders over to the large white tent for an elaborate buffet. Louise, her 2 brothers, and their cousin Jakey Astor proceed into the line. Barbara with her sidekick Doris are further back. The prince heads towards the Van Alens, only stopping to apologize and returns to Barbara her book. As the prince rejoins the Van Alens, Barbara discovers a small sealed envelope inside and jumps in excitement, nearly knocking over Doris. Barbara squeals, "I told you he loves Sylvia." Doris in her baby whisper baffles, "Sylvia who?" Barbara gushes, "Sylvia. I spent part of every summer with her in France. They've been dating for years. This spring, her father forbade her from seeing Alexis since he's a penniless prince. I'm helping them get back together. It's true love." Doris doesn't seem as convinced as she watches the prince with Louise. Doris fidgets, and her cowering draws Barbara's ire until she spots the real problem. Up ahead in the serving line, the talented opera singer and Supreme Society hostess, Kobina Wright, prepares plates for her family along with her southern companion, Nacho Duke, whose social ambitions cause much of her daughter Doris's discomfort. Meanwhile, Kobina delights over all the culinary choices, standard barbecue to fancier seafood delicacies. Money sure does afford a great feast. As they exit the line, Kobina notices an open space near Barbara's clueless young stepmother, Irene Hutton. With a flare, Kobina makes her way when she suddenly freezes and nearly drops her plates. Her face changes from happiness to agony. With innate timing, socialite and Louise's mother, Daisy Van Alen, intervenes. She sets Kobina's plates onto the table next to Irene, then whisks her dear friend away, leaving Nacho in a clenched smile with Irene, who delightedly accepts the company. Without much choice, Barbara and Doris sit uncomfortably with their guardians. Nanaline scans around and finally sees the problem. Kobina's charming stockbroker husband Bill Wright off to the side, laughing and whispering a little too chummily into another socialite's ear. At the end of the fanciful lunch, Louise introduces Prince Alexis to the reigning society queen and dowager, Alice Vanderbilt. Louise keeps tabs on Barbara's whereabouts to avoid further interaction. Without Daisy, Kobina returns a little more composed, but still not the same. Still forcing back tears, she adjusts her napkin and announces, "Daisy has generously offered to introduce Doris and Barbara to the Mrs. Alice Vanderbilt." While most girls fawn over the players, introverted Doris hides from view, drawn more to the company of animals over society and her mother, Nanaline. Doris strokes the nose of one magnificent stallion, wishing she could take him home. Her private, tranquil moment is interrupted by the non-couple strolling up. The prince laments, "Being one with the horse is essential. That's why I need my very own string of ponies. This constant switching is nonsense." Louise throws a fake sympathy pout, and the prince teasingly pokes her ribs. A horn announces the beginning of the next match. The prince pries the rather large encumbering purse out of Louise's resistant and clinging hands and gives it to Doris. Then he adeptly lifts Louise onto a horse so intimate and flirty that Doris blushes. The prince gives Louise a large white ball, then mounts his own steed and takes the mallet from the stable attendant. The non-couple rides out onto the middle of the field, greeting the other players. Shyly, Louise rolls the game ball in her hands. It's closer to a baseball in size, but hard like a cricket ball. Overwhelmingly, the crowd stares at her from the sidelines. The umpire, also on horseback, motions to see if she is ready. Alexis nods his assurance. With all her might, she tosses the ball out onto the field. It's a fairly weak throw, but enough to get the game in gear. Immediately, the players lunge forward into combat mode. Frightened, both Louise and her horse instinctively pull back. Another umpire nudges her off the field. She gallops away. Intensely, the players trounce up and down the field, swinging their mallets near collision, smashing against each other. The game of polo is like most team sports using balls, a long field with goalposts on both ends, offense, defense, and goalkeeping. Alexis plays the lead striker position. Coming from the Russian horse country, he truly reigns on the polo field. His dexterity and flexibility combined with a driven need for speed and danger. Ladies swoon and the men cheer. Back in safety, Louise finds her brothers and cousin Jakey sitting with Doris and Barbara. A panic takes over Louise until Doris politely hands over the large purse. Alexis's hot-headed temper provides much amusement to the Van Alen brothers. When the opposing team cuts off the prince's line of movement and nearly hits him in the head, Alexis lets out a stream of obscenities punctuated with a few emphatic gestures. Whenever he passes by the Van Alen entourage, he smiles or winks at Louise. She nearly jumps out of her skin, cheering him on. On the field, his counter is equally hot-headed and won't stand for the chastisement. They ride rough up and down the field. The opponent drives the ball hard, but overcalculates and sends the ball and horses into the sidelines, landing on top of the Van Alen crew. Everyone scurries. Alexis hurriedly charges and cuts off the opponent's horse from trampling Louise and Barbara. Alexis yells at his rival to get back on the field and then at the umpire to take better charge. The prince glances at the visibly shaken Louise, who nods. She will be okay. After the commotion, they resettle. Louise's knocked-over purse has spilled its secret contents. Barbara notices a batch of familiar envelopes as she goes to pick one up. Louise quickly snatches it and urges the girls to watch the match. The call for the divot stomping breaks the tension. As everyone heads out, Louise is grateful for the distraction. Alexis checks in again with Louise, who remains flushed, whether from the game activities, his attention, or Barbara's. Through the next two chukkas, as the rounds or periods are called in polo, Barbara watches Louise closely. Horse sweat permeates the air, clomping, hitting, sharp turns, near misses, then one big collision. Alexis' steed bucks and crashes on top of him. The horses screech as the players halt, nearly trampling him. Once safe from the horses, he lies motionless on the ground. From the sidelines, everyone is silent. Louise screams out, then runs onto the field. Her brothers chase and grab her before she can get to the body. The umpire clears the area as the doctor runs up. Barbara and Doris come up next to the Van Alens. In deep fear, Barbara unconsciously grabs Louise's hand as they wait for a better sign. Prince Alexis struggles to move and raises up his right hand. He's badly injured his left shoulder. The doctor motions for a gurney. They carry the prince off the field and the teens trail behind. As others watch the final moments of the game, the girls stay on vigil until he emerges. The day ends with a large fancy dinner and the requisite dance. Now with left arm in a sling, Prince Alexis is not one to miss further festivities. Louise remains faithfully and attentively at his side. He insists on dancing. She declines, but he promises to keep it slow. He winces every few steps and holds her closer for balance. Others too enjoy the enchanting moment. Kobina clings tightly to her husband, trying to quell her fears of another woman. Doris enjoys the orchestra and notices that the piano player seems familiar. Off to the side, Barbara sneaks over and finds Louise's purse. When no one is looking, she opens it to see the stash of familiar envelopes and takes one. As the sky darkens, little flashes of light float and drift. Louise places her head on Alexis's good shoulder as they slowly dance. The night takes over as fireflies fill the air. Section 2. History and Historiography. Polo is the sport of kings and one of the oldest organized team sports. The over 2,000-year-old sport originated among nomadic Iranian and Turkic peoples, whose lives depended on horseback skills. Between 6th century BC to 1st century AD in Persia, polo evolved as the method for cavalry training in the king's elite guard. By the Middle Ages, the sport migrated from Constantinople to Japan, then down to Arabia, India, and Tibet. From India in the 19th century, polo crossed into British and then American societies and down to Latin America. By the 1920s and 30s, one of the best places to play polo was in the United States. Some more quick basics about polo. The length of the polo field is 9 American football or 6 international football, soccer fields put together, measuring at a maximum 300 yards by 160 yards or 275 meters by 145 meters. The goal line is 8 yards or 7.3 meters wide between the poles. Periods are called chukkas, which are roughly 7 minutes long, with 4 to 8 chukkas per game. Each team has 4 players with numbered jerseys. Number 1 and 2 are offensive, 3 is tactical, and 4 is defense. Patrons are the head sponsors of the team and might serve as one of the 4 players. All polo players must hold the horse's reins in their left hand and hit with their right. The harshest rules involve the line of the ball's movement and interception. The danger of polo comes from its biggest feature, the horses. Some of the best are bred from Argentina and must mature and train until the age between 5 and 7 years, later than most standard racehorses at 2 to 3 years. Polo ponies respond to the slightest touch of the reins. One of the main expensive polo matches is traveling with the team in a string of 13 ponies for each player, as 2 to 3 horses per player might be used in a single chukka. There are various polo seasons based on locale. Europe, New England, Santa Barbara, Palm Beach, India, Asia, Middle East, Southwest Asia. Each season might last a few weeks to 2 months before moving on to the next. A polo player might serve on only one team or multiple as long as the seasons and territories do not conflict. A full-time player might travel 7 months or more in a given year. All this is to say, polo is a very organized and expensive sport. In the circle of the super wealthy, polo players are the epitome of the old-school notion of playboys. They exhibit the manly competitive edge and prowess combined with the necessary charm and polish to mingle amongst the elite. Most come from or aspire to wealth. A polo player might make the perfect trophy husband to a libidinous heiress. Only the young ladies should be forewarned. A polo girlfriend, mistress, or wife will inevitably become a polo widow. The life of a polo player requires a lot of training and travel. His horses, his games, and quite possibly his other women will provide plenty of competition for his time. All that said, polo is naturally the perfect sport for Prince Alexis, and he has done so well he even competes on the international team Les Diables. What no one realizes is the impoverished prince is ready to settle down, per se. more in that he is seeking an ample fortune to fund his overly privileged life. Not any marriage will do. He's very competitive both on the field and off, as well as under family pressure. He is the youngest of 5 siblings, all of whom marry their way back into privilege. In fact, so well and famous will their marital alliances become that they are dubbed the marrying Mdivanis. His 4 siblings have set a high standard. Older sister Nina married in 1925 American lawyer Charles H. Uberick, a former Stanford professor with law offices in London. Youngest sister Rusi seduced her way into marriage with famous painter Jose Maria Sert in 1928. His 2 older brothers, Sergei and David, married millionaire actresses. David was the first to marry actress Mae Murray in 1926. Silent screen star Polo Negri, previously mentioned in an earlier episode for her role as a mummy, attended the wedding with her lover Rudolph Valentino, who died shortly thereafter. Polo was consoled in her grief by Sergei and married him in 1927. Both brothers are living a high life on their wives' hard-earned million-dollar fortunes. The enthusiastic, newly titled princesses each gifted their husbands with polo ponies. Alexis has yet to make his mark but plans to outdo them all. Louise Van Alen's inheritance is many more times than the others' fortunes combined. Alexis is also quite determined to keep away his Hollywood in-laws from the more polished society set. He is, after all, the supreme snob among snobs. Section 3. Contemporary and Personal Relevance. In studying the lives of the uber-wealthy, polo is a recurring topic. I must admit, prior to this episode, my extent of knowledge was limited to the scene in Pretty Woman where Julia Roberts participates in the stomping of the divots, my video internship at the Houston Medical Center where I saw footage of a charity benefit polo match with actor Tommy Lee Jones, and my mother's former boss who had his own polo team from which small tidbits would surface. Fortunately, a close friend and a former equestrian filled in many details to create the ambiance and logistics of attending a polo event. The current international star, also referred to as the David Beckham of polo, is Ignacio Nacho Figueras, who was Vanity Fair's number 2 sexiest man alive in 2009 with 15% of the vote. He was ranked in between then vampire sensation Twilight's Robert Pattinson with a large margin of votes, and third place at 12% votes, perennial favorite Brad Pitt. Nacho is also the face of Ralph Lauren's polo brand. Check him out. It's so worth it. Only need 2 words, Nacho and polo. Oh, how I sometimes suffer in research. Other than Pretty Woman, polo has some other pop culture references, most famously in the original 1932 comic strip of Flash Gordon. Flash is a handsome polo player and Yale graduate. For the 1980s film, Flash was turned into a quarterback. Other famous polo players include Walt Disney, Clark Gable, General George Patton, and Winston Churchill. And the biggest and most international famous family of polo players are, of course, England's prime royals, Prince Philip, Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry. In time, Prince George and Prince Louis might join the family tradition, or possibly even their sister and self-proclaimed warrior princess, Charlotte. Even that royal family's history will eventually play a role in our story. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns, they say the sun never sets on a Vanderbilt, but no good fortune lasts forever. Until then. Come check us out on social media and tell us what you think at As the Money Burns via Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. More details and transcripts also available at our website. As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com.